Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the second ERC Starting Grant mentoring event of the Young Academy of Europe, co-organized with the Academia Europaea Budapest Knowledge Hub. My name is Katalin Solymosi, and I'm the recruitment vice chair of the Young Academy of Europe, and I will be moderating the first part of this event. Before we begin, I have some housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded and to be available later. Please turn off your microphones and also your videos during the discussion and the presentations. If you have any questions during the presentations, please type them into the chat function on Zoom, and we will be back to them, and I will bring them at the end of the event when we will have a Q&A session. If you have any kind of technical issues or problems, please address them directly to Katalin Borvaldi, who is a co-host of the event, via the chat function. Now I would like to turn over to Janka Mátrai, the chair of Young Academy of Europe, and ask her to open this event.
Thank you very much, Katalin. Thank you all for joining us today. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the second installment of the Young Academy of Europe mentoring events for researchers in EU13 and Associated Countries. Last year, in 2020, we organized a very well-attended event that was focused on the grant writing process, with tips and wisdom from Young Academy of Europe members who had been successful in ERC starting grant applications. Now, this time, we've had the wonderful opportunity to partner up with the Academia Europaea Budapest Hub, and together we've prepared an ambitious event covering another aspect that is key to the funding process, the evaluation panels. So really understanding how these panels work, how panel members discuss grants and make recommendations is of great importance at the time that applicants prepare their applications and should really be kept in mind when writing them. Research funding is not equally distributed across Europe, and young scholars from EU13 and associated countries are less represented among ERC grantees. And we are committed to help tackle this inequality. I hope you will all enjoy and make the most out of today's event, interacting in the chat and asking questions. I would like to thank all our expert speakers in the plenary session, the distinguished scholars who have generously volunteered to be panel members in 3 different domains, the applicants who have kindly donated their previous applications for this educational activity, and to my fellow Young Academy of Europe board members and the excellent Academia Europaea Budapest Hub staff for their enormous important contributions to make this truly collaborative event happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Janka. Now I would like to ask Eva Kondorosi, co-chair of the Widening European Participation thematic mission of the Academia Europaea Budapest Knowledge Hub, and member of the group of chief scientific advisors to the European Commission, and former vice president of the European Research Council, to address her welcome speech to the participants.
Thank you very much, Kata. The Widening European Participation is a priority mission of Academia Europaea and also the Budapest Knowledge Hub. But there are also a lot to do in the ERC grant system, where only 2% of the ERC budget goes to the EU13 countries and almost nothing to the east part of Europe. The talents are everywhere. So the young scientists in this region should be so excellent as their partners in the Western countries. Nevertheless, they are not very successful in the ERC applications, and the reasons can be multiple. The conditions are different, but we have to overcome the difficulties and to have young scientists equally successful. At the ERC, I was responsible also for the widening participation. The major problem was, and I think still it is, that there were very few applications from Central and East Europe, and the quality of many applications were rather poor. the projects were not ambitious enough and the applications were not well written. I thank the Young Academy of Europe taking the initiative for this ERC mentoring program, and also the Hungarian Academy of Sciences hosting this event. This will give an insight in the evaluation process of the ERC, why an application is good or excellent, or why other one is not. I wish and encourage all of you to apply for ERC grants. You must trust yourself, set the bar high, ask for the criticism of as many scientists as you can, write an excellent proposal with original ideas, and you will be successful. Nevertheless, don't forget that a postdoc period abroad is also essential. And now let's continue with the presentation that will give you most relevant information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva. Now we'll move on and continue the webinar with general information about the different funding opportunities of the European Research Council, as well as the application and evaluation procedures of the ERC grants. First, I would like to introduce Janka Mátrai, Scientific Officer at the European Research Council Executive Agency, and ask her to start her presentation. You are muted.
I'm so sorry. Thank you very much, Katalin, and thank you for this very nice introduction. Indeed, let me just start with my presentation. Here we are. I'm trying to enter into full screen mode. Yes. And then I think that you can see it properly now.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So let me start. Thank you very much for this great opportunity, and thank you all for attending my talk today about the European Research Council funding opportunities under the new framework program called Horizon Europe, with special focus on the application and evaluation processes. I'm sorry. Okay, before going into the details, I would like to give you just very briefly the background of the current framework program, Horizon Europe, and lay out again briefly the main problems the widening participation countries face. So the new framework program is organized into 3 pillars, and pillar 1 being the excellent science, hosting the European Research Council. The budget for this period, which is again a 7-year period, is 16 billion euro for the European Research Council, and this constitutes about 17% of the total budget of the Horizon Europe Framework Program. I would like to draw your attention also to this panel, which is an overarching panel over the 3 pillars, the widening participation and strengthening the European research area programs, which are indeed actions and programs, instruments aiming at the mitigation of the problems the widening participation applicants, researchers face. So, what are these problems, and especially in the context of applying to ERC? These problems can be the best expressed by the success rates, and this graph shows you the success rates calculated over the previous 2 framework programs, running from 2007 to 2020, and the success rates are indicated as the averages above the blue bars, broken down by countries. On the left-hand side of this graph, you can see the so-called EU15 countries. In the middle, I indicated the widening participation countries with a yellow bar under their names, and these are typically the EU13 countries plus Malta, Cyprus, Greece, and Portugal. And on the right-hand side, you can see the associated countries, both those are which are performing high and those which perform less good. And so not much need to be said to see that indeed the success rates are lower in the widening participation countries as compared to many of the EU15 and some of the associated countries. Trying to understand what's behind this, we can find many reasons, as already mentioned by Eva, and there are 2 good studies which describes the problems and also offered some ideas in which direction we could move to find solutions. I add the links below the map that you can see on the screen. And the map is just showing again the geographical location of the widening participation in associated countries. And if you calculate the average of success rate again for the 2 previous work programs over the all widening participation countries versus the rest, we can see that it is indeed a big difference, 3.5% for the widening participations and 12 to 13% for the other countries. And also, as mentioned by Eva, one of the factors contributing to this discrepancy is that indeed 90% of the applications we receive at the ERC come from the EU15 plus the high-performing associated countries. And only the rest comes from the widening participations and the Eastern European associated countries. So the aim of my talk today is to convince you that indeed excellence is everywhere. And we really think that you make good chance applying for our ERC grants, and we would like to encourage you and convince you to apply, and it's worthy for you to apply for an ERC grant, being a researcher in a widening participation country. There are several instruments, and some of them I will very briefly touch, and we can talk about them in more details later in the Q&A session, offered by ERC to help you to boost your skills, boost your CV, as well as offered by other programs in the framework program. I again added the links above the little scheme. And there is a very nice presentation available also online, which summarizes all the available instruments to help the widening participant applicants, not only for in the context of ERC, but in general. And so why is it good to apply to an ERC grant? So ERC supports excellence of the researchers and excellence of the research idea, supports the independence, mobility. The ERC grants are portable. It's the grant of the PI who wins the grant. It can be taken from a host institution to another host institution. It gives financial autonomy to our researchers. Our researchers can be of any age, any nationality, everywhere in Europe and associated countries, and you can be dually affiliated. You have to be affiliated to a host institution in Europe or associated countries up to 50%. Our funds are for research in all fields of science, any topic of interest. You can establish your own team. We support your creative freedom and projects with new ideas, which are PI-driven, bottom-up, and have a groundbreaking, high-risk, high-gain profile. ERC is also a quality label. It is shown that it increased the visibility of our grantees and the chances for further funding, which is very important because you cannot stand only with an ERC fund.
Sorry, Janka, to interrupt you. We cannot see the top of the slide. I don't know why. There is a gray bar.
Yes, the floating bar came back. I will hide it again.
Sorry.
No problem, no problem. Thank you for letting me know. Do you see it better now?
Yes.
Okay. So our grantees can apply for 3 different main grants: the starting, consolidator, and advanced grant, and two other schemes called proof of concept and synergy. But today I'm going to talk about only the starting grant. And of course, if you have questions relating to the others at the end of my talk, I'm happy to answer those questions as well. The starting grants are for our young researchers, typically for researchers who had won their PhD between 2 to 7 years, counting back from the time of application. The budget, or the basic budget of a starting grant, is 1.5 million euro, which can be extended with an extra 1 million in case of special situations, for example, coming over from overseas back to Europe, or requesting large equipment, requesting budget for fieldwork, etc. This is all well explained in our work program, and the duration of this project is for 5 years. When you apply for an ERC grant, the most important is really your idea. Your excellent, groundbreaking idea which you absolutely believe in, and you want to build your research life and avenue around it. And when you have your idea, then you of course need to start to think how you will put it in a practical sense into an application. And so before you apply, having your idea already, please visit the funding and tender portal. In the old time it was participant portal, and just get familiar with all the documentations read about already funded projects so you can position your own idea and project in mind. There are all the projects are available on the abstract level at the ERC website and on with more details also on the Cordis website. These blue links are all active, so I can share my presentation. You just need to click and it drives you to the right website. And discuss with ERC grantees, discuss with your peers, National Contact Point, online support. You can find amazing amount of online support and granting offices, etc. Check the evaluation criteria. It's very important in the work program or in the guide for applicants. And then prepare your project and your CV. When you prepare your project, think of its originality. Compose your ideas into clear hypotheses. Think of contingency, risk management plans, because we like high risk, high gain projects, but we also like when those projects are feasible. And think about preliminary data, or if you don't have that, then think about circumstantial evidences, publications that can support your idea and your research proposal. When you write your CV, try to find a balance between selling your idea and your research accomplishment as a competitive, but at the same time not oversold CV. We like narrative CVs. There is plenty of place in an ERC application CV where you can explain what was your contribution to a given publication, why that publication is seminal, so you can communicate the most important points to the evaluator. And of course, you can include any other contributions to science, anything that you have in mind, organizing workshops, participating in conferences, reach out activities to the citizens, and also special career events that may slow your career down, but which might have given some special turns to your career. All these are very important information. This is very important information to the evaluators. So when you write your proposal, please try to write it in a reviewer-friendly way. And we advise that it is read by somebody else, not only by you, but it's of course entirely up to you. And reviewer-friendly is important because, as you can imagine, the panel who is evaluating your proposal will read many more other proposals as well, and not and it's extremely time-consuming and intensive work. The synopsis, we call the synopsis, is the part B1 part of the proposal. You have a part B2, and I'm going to talk about it later. And really, I would like to stress this, that it has to be impeccable. And the reason for this is because the evaluation process is composed of 2 steps. And in the first step, you will have, your project will be evaluated only based on this synopsis, the part B1 document. So it has to convince the evaluator that your project idea is good enough, and of course your CV supporting it is, to pass it to the second step of evaluation. While you will have much more place to expand on your project, explain its feasibility and also the methods in the part B2, the document, we really recommend to include already into this part some level of description of the feasibility and the methods, because otherwise they will not be able to judge your proposal from all the point of views and all corners. And finally, do not rush your application. Give enough time and watch the submission deadlines. We don't recommend to submit your proposal really at the last moment. Anything can happen, including technical issues, which we try, of course, to mitigate, and to even we often give extra times if the error was on our side, but it's better to avoid these situations. Once your proposal is sent in, the deadline is passed, then the evaluation starts, and the evaluation is actually based on only one and sole evaluation criterion, and that is excellence. The excellence is evaluated at 2 levels: the research project itself and your accomplishment, your CV as principal investigator. We check for your project's groundbreaking nature, potential impact, which impact can be only scientific impact. We don't ask for societal impact, for example, or applicability, and the scientific approach. We check for your intellectual capacity, creativity, and commitment. I would like to emphasize here that the emphasis is always a bit more on the research project, Of course, the CV and the accomplishments are important, but we look for the great new idea when we evaluate ERC proposals. So your proposal will land in one of the 27 panels organized into the along the three different scientific domains. And the panels are composed of international experts who will peer review your proposal. One proposal is reviewed by at least 4 reviewers, and this is in step 1. And in step 2, their work is complemented by reviews coming from so-called external or remote reviewers who do not participate in the evaluation meeting itself, but they provide their opinion throughout our evaluation portal. The eligibility will be checked for your proposal, and then the step 1 evaluation will take place. Again, only based on the synopsis, the B1 part, and CV and the track record. Here, I would like to highlight 2 terms, mobility and independence, which are heavily discussed during the step 1 evaluation phase. And also to some extent, of course, in the step 2, but already here in step 1, and it's very important. So indeed, mobility is not per se an evaluation criterion, but it has a value to indicate your scientific achievements, and it has an element in your CV, and it has an indicative power of independence, but not necessarily. You can also demonstrate independence in different ways. And that's why, again, I would like to highlight the importance of a narrative CV. If you feel and judge yourself that your performance from the point of view of mobility is maybe rendering you less competitive as compared to some other candidates, then please explain how you can ensure independence once of your own research and your idea once you receive the grant. Something happened, I'm sorry. Okay, so your project will receive A, B, or C score in step 1. A score means that your project is passed to step 2, and the score is given for both the proposal and the CV. Score B means that your proposal was of sufficiently high quality, but not enough to receive an A score. You will receive a report, all the reports from the evaluators, the panel members, as well as a consensus report, which we call panel comment, which explains what was the final decision and why. And you will be subjected for 1 year reapplication restriction. C score means that your proposal was of insufficient quality. Again, you will receive all the reports and the consolidated panel comment, as well as you will be subjected again to restrictions, but this time for 2 years. I know this is harsh, and I know that this weighs down our applicants. I would like to highlight here that we have many successful reapplicants, and these reports are very valuable. They really give you a critical angle and look on your own proposal, and it's powerful enough to have a new thought and new ideas how you can reshape your proposal and apply again. And here I would like to highlight also that because of the restrictions, it's extremely important that you apply early enough within your eligibility window. If you pass to the second step, your proposal will be again evaluated, again this time of the full proposal, part B1 and 2, and you will have an interview. When you prepare for an interview, please include into your slides the new results that you have obtained after submitting your proposal. Complement your proposal that you can even more strengthen your application when presenting it to the panel. And please practice your interview. Participate in mock interviews. This can be organized on the institutional level, on your group level, together with the national contact points. All this is available. On the step 2, you will receive an A or a B score. A means that your project was sufficiently good to fund. Some of the A's will be in fact funded, but unfortunately we never have enough money. So those who will not be funded effectively, but A proposals, they will remain on the reserve list. B means that your proposal is not funded this time. At step 2, there are no restrictions. So if you receive the B here, you can apply the next year again. So you will receive the feedback again. This time also those who received an A, So those who are funded receive also feedback, and is very valuable. Some of our applicants and later grantees reshape the proposal before granting based on the recommendations and the comments they received from the panel. You receive also the comments from the external, the so-called remote reviewers, and then the granting phase starts. I would like to give you the take-home message that at any of the two steps, independently of what you have received, please stay motivated and apply, because only when you play you can win the game. And we know that ERC is a prestigious grant, but it is just a grant, and many our grantees succeeded at successive reapplications. So to go towards the end of my presentation, I would like to here discuss few misconceptions. So ERC funds indeed frontier research, but this doesn't mean that we fund only, let's say, fundamental or basic research, or only applied or translational research. We fund all kinds of frontier research, including interdisciplinary or non-interdisciplinary proposals. So we really don't care about these categories. They are all welcome. The budget is distributed among the scientific panels, those 27 panels which will evaluate your proposal according to demand. If a panel receives more proposals, a higher proportion of the given budget will be allocated to that particular panel. So it's not useful to think ahead, okay, probably this panel will have a higher budget, so if I apply there, my application makes a higher chance. It doesn't work in this way. The panel descriptors are not representing ERC scientific priorities. They are just there to guide you and help you to decide to which panel you submit your proposal, and also helping us, the scientific officers and the evaluating panel, to be able to manage the proposals we receive. The success rates are flat across the course. The aggregated average is 12 to 13%, and this is not now divided based on whether the applications coming from widening participation countries or not. This means that if you are a starting grantee, your chance to succeed at the beginning of your eligibility window is the same as your chance to succeed when you apply close to the end of the eligibility window. But when you are close to the eligibility window, and if you don't receive an A to go to step 2, you will be restricted for 1 to 2 years, and you might fall out from this window, meaning that you will not be applied again in the starting grant scheme. And finally, about your publication record. Of course, strong and top publications are important. I don't want to mislead anyone. Nevertheless, we have a method to evaluate the CV in its context. There is now the DORA declaration, which ERC signed and will be effective in 2020, but our evaluation process is actually very much already aligned with what is explained within the context of the DORA declaration. And finally, very important, the host institution is not subject to evaluation. Just briefly, I hope I didn't skip. So, as I already mentioned, these are all the additional benefits. The €1 extra million plus the dual affiliations are possible. ERC has two nice supporting schemes for applicants from widening participation countries. These are the visiting research fellowships and the mentoring initiative, which is really a new mentoring, which is a really new initiative. And this helps identifying international experts to provide coaching for our applicants, and the visiting research fellowship is to fund researchers research visits, to establish ERC projects in order to develop the researchers' potential before they apply for their first ERC grant. And finally, working in an ERC funded team is also extremely useful. I copied again the link here. You can find all information about these initiatives on our website. Two more points I would like to mention before I finish. If you apply in 2022, your host institution has to provide a gender equality plan. Again, we can talk about this in more detail if you are interested. And you will be able to include into the Part B1 document a description for mitigating the impact if you had any negative impact on your CV because of the COVID lockdown. The others are not so relevant for the starting grant, but I leave it there in case you are interested. Again, the work program and the call calendar is available on our website for the 2022 calls. And I would like to finish my presentation with this slide. I put here all the contact information, our website, and there are the so-called ERC classes on the YouTube channel of ERC available, which explain in 5 videos the most important points that you need to consider when you apply for an ERC grant. If you have questions, you can write to any of the emails indicated on our website or to me directly. My email address is at the bottom of this slide, and I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Janka, for the excellent presentation. If you have any questions to her, please add them in the chat and we'll be able to answer them, at least some of them, during the Q&A session at the end. Now we have to move on to our next speaker, Gergely Bőhm, who is one of the national contact points for national contact points for ERC in Hungary, and will give us some insight into the common mistakes and highly valued elements of ERC applications as viewed by ERC evaluators. Please, Gergely, the floor is yours. You are muted.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm trying to share my presentation. I hope I have succeeded already. Not yet. Maybe now.
We see the Windows background.
Yeah, that's nice, but
now it's okay. Now it's fine.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. So yes, indeed, I try to say a few words about the common mistakes and highly valued elements of ERC application as seen by evaluators. I prepared this presentation based on the evaluation reports. So I try to answer the questions that what do evaluators look for in the proposals and in the CV and track record. What are the strengths and weaknesses that they address in the evaluation reports? What are the most common mistakes and maybe some tips how to avoid them? And of course, to see what are the valuable additions. So the evaluation process, Janka already presented quite nicely. I just want to show where the feedback to applicants happens in form of an evaluation report. This is basically the end of the process. And the evaluation reports are very useful for the applicants to learn about the opinion of the panel and to improve their proposal if they decide to resubmit the proposal. They also give an insight on how the evaluators think. So what do these reports contain? But before I go into that, I have to say that these reports are confidential, so it's only the grantee who can see it, and the program committee members of ERC have access to these reports. So this is the way how I could read these reports. Of course, I'm not going to mention any comment which would make any proposal or any reviewer identifiable. These will be rather generic comments that I'm going to show. Some of them were also modified a little bit just to make sure that any reference to any project is deleted. So they contain a basic administrative information on the project, obviously, the abstract, the evaluation criteria, exactly the same way as it is in the work program. So this is very important to note and to watch for all applicants. Also, the panel score, Janka already mentioned. So projects with the score C are dismissed. They don't go into step 2, phase of the evaluation. With B, you can get to B in step 2 as well, but usually at step 1. And proposals with the score A can be funded, can be on the reserve list, or can not be funded in small number. Also, the evaluation report has a ranking range. This is a percentage which shows the let's say, the part of the, okay, so it shows how well the project basically was ranked in the panel from a scale from 1 to 100, but there are ranges in that. So those projects which are funded are in the first range, which is something between 1% and 30 to 40%. So these are the funded projects, and there are smaller ranges after that. The panel comment, which is a summary of the evaluation, is usually rather generic, so there is not much detail on the project and the PI on that. But there are comments from individual reviewers, at least 3, but even up to 8 reviewers, and these are collected in 3 paragraphs. 2 of them refer to the project, commenting on the groundbreaking nature and potential impact of the project and the scientific approach, and 1 of them is on the principal investigator. So what I did is I collected comments on these 2 parts, the first criterion, the research project, and then the second, the principal investigator, which is, as you all know, the main criteria for an ERC project. So what is evaluated for the research project? Firstly, the groundbreaking nature and potential impact of the research project based on these 3 questions. I will not read them. And the scientific approach is also evaluated separately. And then comes the principal investigator, also based on 3 questions. So first of all, the groundbreaking nature. But before that, some general observations. So one thing which I found very important is that the reviewers strictly follow the evaluation criteria. This should come as no surprise. There is a very thorough briefing for panel members. Sometimes they seem to go beyond that only with very short and always positive comments, maybe on the research environment, making sure that the project is feasible, or sometimes making references to the social, economic, or medical impact of the study of the project, which is not a criterion for evaluation. It is also very notable that due to the overall high quality of ERC proposals, the comments are usually much nicer than the scores would suggest. So even B-rated proposals, which are, let's say, in the second third of all rankings, would often get a review that still reads excellent. Some reviewers do look for gaps, flaws, weaknesses that can help them to dismiss the proposal at the panel meeting, but these flaws or weaknesses does not necessarily mean that the project is dismissed. So even in the comments of funded proposals, there can be doubts raised or weaker points identified, and still the panel finally decides to support these projects. There are 2 things which are of crucial importance, and that is the novelty and the groundbreaking nature. If these issues are identified as problems with the project, I can tell you that the project fails all the time. And of course, there are differences throughout panels and domains. So now, going back to the groundbreaking nature and potential impact. First, some negative comments. These are usually related to proposals with a C ranking. One which may sound good as well, but it is usually a negative comment. It is a very focused project, meaning that the scope is too narrow. Very typical one. The next is, I consider it rather incremental than groundbreaking. Again, a very important issue that the ERC is not funding incremental research. They are looking for novel ideas. The third one is actually the same almost. The research would be solid and incremental rather than transformative, meaning they look for transformative ideas. lacks ambition and does not go beyond the state of the art. Again, very typical comment from reviewers. There is also it is also difficult to find the right balance between high risk and high gain. Obviously, as this comment says, in case of this proposal, this was not right. So the proposal is really high risk, but whether it is high gain is not certain due to the lack of elements, the lack of information. And the last one is also referring to the same issue: no sufficient data and information that would make the hypothesis and the new proposal convincing or appealing. So that these are probably the worst comments one can receive. When we look at proposals with a B rating, they usually state that the main idea is well put together, and there are issues with the methodology or the feasibility of the project. Just to list some of them, so they call the project ambitious, highly ambitious, somewhat less positive, with some degree of groundbreaking approach. They address a fundamental problem, etc. But they say it's not very risky, which is again not a positive comment. Okay, and the best proposals in terms of groundbreaking nature and potential impact go beyond usually their own, so their implications go beyond the narrow field of the project. They address an important and timely challenge, sometimes relevant to fundamental research, but always fundamental in terms of the research area. The project is well grounded in supporting evidence, so there is good reasons behind. There are good reasons behind the project. The methodology is state of the art, it's well suited. There are mixed methods and details, plans for the dissemination of the results. So again, dissemination can be a valued element in the proposal. And again, a very important issue is the risk identification and mitigation in the project. If we move on to the scientific approach, again, starting with negative comments. In case of proposals with a C rating, the scientific approach is rather, so normally the feasibility of the project is evaluated based on B2. It's only the methodology that is discussed based on B1, and proposals with a C rating were only evaluated based on B1. So these comments are usually very short. It's not very nice to see a comment stating that a project contains a lot of unclear phrasing, and it is not clear how the PI plans to answer the 5 hypotheses. The project is so matricular that there are practically no room left for failure. This obviously means that the project is too risky and the risks were not managed properly. The planned program is extension of the research in the PI stream, again making references to an incremental project, but the proposal does not offer alternative contingency strategies. This is very important, again, for risk management. Okay. As we go to B or A rated project, there is much more detail on the science behind the project, because these projects are evaluated by external evaluators as well, and also the B2 part is taken into account. Okay, feasibility becomes an important issue here. The scientific approach is feasible as the aim is simple. Well, this is not a very positive comment after all. The methodology is well described, but encompasses a very broad range of challenges, all of very high risk level. Maybe it's a risky project, but maybe a little bit too much over-ambitious. Okay. It is very important that the objectives are stated clearly in the project. Interestingly, I have not found much references to to budget or the financial part of the project. Apparently, this is not really a main issue in the evaluation. I found one just to have it here. The budget plan is not fully transparent and reproducible. So if it's not clearly written, that's obviously a problem. Okay. And another comment on the resources part. Description does not include indication on the human and instrumental resources needed to implement the various tasks. And finally, the best projects are they are the best because the methodology is state of the art and is well suited to the proposed studies. Of course, methodology is very important in the scientific approach. Panel members like mixed methods and detailed plans for the dissemination. Sorry, I had this one before. Risk identification and mitigation again comes up as an advantage. It is important to propose reasonable alternative strategies, as the next comment says. And the last one, which is really what every PI would like to hear, each task is driven by clearly described hypotheses. For each task, a series of state-of-the-art yet challenging experiments are proposed. Okay, so trying to summarize the common mistakes, the most important one is always the lack of novelty and the not high gain aspect of a project. Not that important, but still often comes up the missing supporting, the problem with the supporting evidence and problems with the phrasing of the project, the lack of clarity. Surprisingly, not very often reviewers comment on the lack of importance of the project. If they do, they say it's too focused, it's too narrow, there are only practical implications. Again, very seldom is mentioned that the project is overambitious, it is not feasible. The feasibility is usually questioned regarding risks. And again, not very often the wrongly assessed needs for resources are mentioned, but if they are, it is in most cases the human resources and the time of the project, and very seldom the financial part. Okay, some of the most highly valued elements, it's the novelty, it's the appropriate and novel methodology, and maybe less obvious, it's the fundamental contribution to the scientific field, that the implications go beyond the field of the project. There is an appreciable impact as of importance of the project and relevance, not socio-economic impact. The clear and strong motivation of the researcher, the timeliness of the project, and in general, the overall quality, the clarity of the descriptions of methodology and working arrangements. It's important that the risks are well identified and well managed, and the dissemination is an aspect that comes up more often than I expected. Okay, and now we move on to the principal investigator. So the reviewers rate the PI's ability to conduct groundbreaking research, or independence, or creative independent thinking, and his or her scientific expertise. The possible ratings are non-competitive, good, very good, excellent, and outstanding or exceptional, depending on the panel. Non-competitive and good ratings are very seldom. It is usually very good, excellent, and outstanding that is mentioned. In general, compared to the research project, there is a lot less information on the assessment of the PI in forms of written comments. So usually you can see these ratings and very little written comments, because these are optional, and sometimes they are even difficult to match with the ratings. Negative ratings are seldom commented. Non-competitive ratings are really rare, so it's not happening too often. But interestingly, even in case of funded projects, the PI is not necessarily receiving 3 outstanding or exceptional ratings for each of his or her abilities. Nevertheless, it is important to mention that the CV and track record is what gives credibility to the project, and is seen to be considered when assessing the feasibility of the project as well. So there are comments in the project section that somehow seem to review the ability of the PI as well. Some of the negative comments that came up. I'm not convinced that the proponent understands the key physics issues here. This is obviously a killer comment. His career shows no record of groundbreaking multidisciplinary research. And still, with this comment, still the PI was rated as good. His publication record is fair, but does not show any major achievement in terms of well-recognized papers. Papers are published mainly in collaboration with their supervisors and senior professors. This is not good. Independence is very important. Lack of management experience is sometimes mentioned, but again, this will not kill a proposal alone. He has no track record in the domain of the proposal, although it's very useful to have at least some publications that are directly related to the topic of the proposal. Even with this comment, the PI got an excellent rating. And some of the best comments that I found, which seems important. The PI received several prestigious fellowships. His visibility, scientific visibility is good. He has published several publications, many as first or corresponding authors, again, important for the independence. Some of her citation impact, which is outstanding for someone at this career stage, comes from papers co-authored with famous colleagues. This may be not rated entirely positively, but a significant proportion comes from work on which she was lead author. The PI is a natural candidate to explore the project. This relates to his or her expertise, motivation towards the aim of the project. Clear determination, mentioning substantial contribution as a graduate student. So it's very important to state all your achievements as PI, even as graduate students. Mobility is considered positively as well. This is what the next comment says. And it is important that the PI shows strong commitment towards the project by the time commitment that he or she sets. It is also favorably evaluated if the PI has secured funding for other projects already. Okay, so just a summary of the highly valued elements, and then I conclude very shortly. So a strong publication record is, of course, very important also to establish independence and the groundbreaking results. At least one publication that is linked to the topic of the proposal is usually evaluated positively, very much. It is important to list all grants, fellowships, awards that happened. High commitment is a very positive aspect. Motivation, if demonstrated, is important. Any leadership role, even for starting grantee, is important to show in the CV and the proposal. It's important to demonstrate the ability to attract funding. Sometimes it's useful to list collaborators, show mobility, and improve visibility, if possible, by even by visiting conferences, websites, etc. Okay, so now the final on how to avoid the common mistakes. So what I found is this is very obvious, very important to read the work program and even the information for applicants to, and make sure to address all evaluation criteria. It is very useful to read project summaries, abstracts of other ERC projects and learn about already funded projects in detail. Write and rewrite the proposal several times to make sure that the proposal is structured, easy to read, clear and interesting. Start to look for gaps in the proposal or ask colleagues to do it and look for gaps, flaws in the proposal. And do not miss to address the motivation, competitors and collaborators, supporting evidence, make sure risk management is properly put together, and mention dissemination activities. And as for the CV and the BI, it is important to work on the CV and the track record well in advance, already with an eye on the ERC requirements, and above all, demonstrate independence. State all achievements in the CV, mention collaborators, and demonstrate the ability to lead the project. And if possible, increase your visibility as a researcher. And as Janka also mentioned, resubmissions are more successful. Use the information in the evaluation report to improve your proposal and contact your NCP. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Gergely. We will go ahead and take some time for questions now. Just a reminder, please be sure to type your questions into the question box in Zoom. So it looks like we have already a few questions to Janka, for example, about the eligibility criteria. So there was a question, does the restriction relate to the project or the person?
So yeah, thank you, Katalin. Indeed, it's for the person, and as such, of course, the project as well, but it's the two are evaluated together. So the eligibility is calculated based on the time passed after obtaining the PhD. And there is a fixed window for the starting grant, and that is 2 to 7 years. So in case you go beyond this eligibility window, the time has passed, then you will not be able to reapply to the starting grant scheme.
Okay, the second question is a little bit related to this. So is the eligibility window considered across grant type? So starting, consolidator and advanced, but I think that's...
Yeah, so for each you have your, so actually for the advanced grant, there is no eligibility window. We count the time and we ask for the records back to 10 years from the time of application, and for the starting grant is 2 to 7 years, and then for the consolidator grant is from 7 to 12 years after getting the PhD, obtaining the PhD.
Okay, thank you. There was a third question. How much time do we get to prepare for the interview? I mean, from the moment we learn that we are invited to the interview until the interview happens. So do they get 3 months or?
Yes, sometimes even 3 months. It depends a bit on the year. We try to harmonize the course across the years. For 2021, it was not really possible due to various reasons, but from 2022 on, we try to keep the same schedule. And indeed, for starting grant is almost a complete 3 months. Yeah.
Thank you. There was a question how the impact of COVID-19 was mitigated.
Okay, so yes, it can, so it's not that it was mitigated. It is possible now in the 2022 applications, and I can't say anything beyond that, that you include a paragraph into your Part B1 document describing any negative effects your research career suffered from the COVID lockdown, and this will be taken into account during evaluation.
Thank you very much for pointing this out. There was a question about how to approach the university with which we would like to work with. So if you can give any
Well,
advice.
This is it's a very broad question, and there are several ways, I believe, and I really don't want to give answers in a way that I would restrict anyone from doing it any differently that I am saying now, but there are, you can imagine several ways via collaborations, addressing directly when you apply, and similarly to when you apply for a PhD position or to a postdoc position. There are also on the participant portal ways to find partners. On the ERC website, there is a possibility to look for partners and host institutions. on conferences. I mean, whatever you imagine, there is no limit to this. It's up to you how you think the best for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Janka. And yeah, I should be aware of the time. I'm sorry, I think we should stop here, and we'll try to answer the questions which remained unanswered in the chat via email. Because yeah, we should go to the next part of our meeting. But first, I would really like to thank again all our presenters of today for their contributions. And thank you for joining this session. We appreciate you being here and hope you will be successful at applying at an ERC Starting Grant. We would also like to thank the Hungarian Academy of Sciences for technical support with the Zoom sessions. Our program will now continue in 3 different breakout rooms belonging to the 3 major ERC domains. So, and as mentioned earlier, in this next part of the webinar, we will try to provide insight into the work of the ERC evaluation panels with the help of moderators and highly experienced and world-renowned scientists who agreed to take part in this so-called mock evaluation panel. And we will also have a funded and an unfunded ERC project that they will discuss during the sessions. To join these sessions, either use the link that you got in your email yesterday with your registration, or please check out the links that we inserted into the chat box, and that will enable you to join the next part of the webinar. So physical sciences and engineering is the PE domain that you need to join. Social sciences and humanities, please look for the SH domain Zoom link, and for life sciences, the LS link. So, and please choose the domain which is relevant for you and join us for this unique experience. And again, thank you for joining us for the first part of the meeting. Goodbye.